You said you've been separated from your father, your boyfriend, your son, and others. What, if anything, have you heard from your family and from those of the people who are close to you fighting on the front lines about what they're experiencing?
Well, it's true. The first thing as the bombs exploded over Kyiv, the first thing I need to take care of was a relocation of my son. So his dad, my ex-husband, had to relocate him because I couldn't do that because I am a member of parliament, so I had to stay put and I had to stay in the capital. And then my dad took my mom to the Western Ukraine, and he came back to fight with the territorial defense units, volunteer units here created all over Ukraine. And then my boyfriend joined the army, well, rejoined. I knew he would be going into the army back because he was in the army before. And well, I haven't seen a single one of them from the very first day of war. I miss both of them greatly. I was particularly concerned for my dad because the area he went to, there were heavy fightings over there and we couldn't get in touch with him for 3 days. My mom was crying and she was very nervous and we didn't know if he's alive or not. But then he, managed to get in touch. He said that there was electricity problems and he couldn't charge his phone, so he couldn't call. He was helping the army based in the area where he was in. And now he's mainly dealing with helping evacuate people. That is what is the most relevant thing to do in many areas around Kyiv, because the Russians are indeed unable to fight against the Ukrainian army. They are trying to fight the Ukrainian people and the civilians, particularly children. And so that is what many people are engaged in right now, including my dad.
And we were just taking a look at some of the fighting on the ground because I really want to get to this point because you've been pretty outspoken about the need for air support. Can you just talk about sort of what air support would do to people like, your boyfriend and your dad who are fighting on the front lines?
So right now, Russia does not have superiority on the ground. The forces on the ground actually managed to push them further from several places. Like from my native city of Kharkiv, they were really close. They were about to get in, but on the ground, they pushed them further. The Ukrainian army pushed them further. They cannot get into the city of Mykolaiv, which is southern Ukraine, which is their way to Odessa, which they really, really want to take. So they cannot fight on the ground, but they do have superiority in the air. And they use it in two directions. First, to scare the civilian population, because they're just dropping bombs randomly in different towns all over Ukraine, killing civilians. They're throwing bombs into residential areas. Just now, I watched some terrible photos from one of the bombings like that. With several people killed, including children again. Yesterday, they dropped a bomb which killed 5 people in one bomb drop, 2 of them babies under 1 year old. So they're doing this. And second of all, they're using aviation to fight against Ukrainian army on the ground. So in case we do get those jets that we have been asking for so much, Ukrainian army will have the cover. They will not be bombing our artillery. They will not be bombing our troops on the ground. And then we shall have a fighting chance. And also, in case we are not that scared for the lives of the civilians from bombs falling onto their heads, it will actually give more space for the Ukrainian army to fight on the ground and to kick them further back into their territory.
But Inna, that's one perspective, and I think what's been on the other side from a lot of NATO nations, in particular, yesterday we heard from Pentagon Press Secretary John Kirby, who there's a lot of concern that if and we're showing a full screen of it right now, there's a lot of concern that if these fighter jets do make their way to Ukraine, that it's going to be an escalation of war. Putin has said that himself. Is that not a valid concern? Should they be rethinking this assessment?
So what do you suggest we do? We cannot give up. We cannot surrender. They are already using the means that are unacceptable. They have already used vacuum bombs in Ukraine against civilian population. We cannot just pretend that we just let it go and let another dictator take over an Eastern European state and accept that this expect that this will not affect the Western states. It will. Putin is a crazy dictator, and he will not stop, even if he destroys the whole country of Ukraine. He will go further. He will go into Poland. He will go into Hungary. He already said that he doesn't like those countries in NATO. He doesn't like the Baltic states in NATO. So in case now he devastates Ukraine, he will go further. That is what the whole world world seems to be refusing to admit, but that is the reality. He is that crazy. He will do that.
But
So
Inna,
we are suggesting take a fight here on our territory.
if NATO nations, though, fail to agree on sending fighter jets, what is it's sort of the second step in potentially de-escalating the situation? I mean, what are you and your lawmakers talking about that would be beneficial to the fight over there?
There is not really much that we can do otherwise, so we shall have to continue fighting on the ground. That will lead to much more casualties. And that is what we're asking to help us to avoid the greatest number of casualties possible with the support from air. But other than that, we don't really have any other choice. And I don't think the world should accept that there is any other choice. The world cannot accept a situation where a dictator just bombards cities in a sovereign state and then is forcing that country to surrender and to take, to give up some of its territory. I don't believe that any Western state would allow for that to happen to itself. And we are not allowing that to happen either. And we really hope for understanding from the West on that side, particularly because we were given assurances of our security when we gave up our nuclear weapon in 1994. We did that because the West promised us that in case someone is a threat to our security, the United States and the United Kingdom will intervene.
And Inna,
we did have those assurances.
As we've been talking, we've actually just got some news too from your side of the world. An aide to President Zelensky has said that Ukraine is ready for a diplomatic solution, potentially with Russia. What does that look like in your opinion? And are you ready and willing to trust Vladimir Putin and Russia at this point in time? I mean, how do you end this conflict and end this crisis for you and the rest of Ukraine?
Well, primarily that is not a conflict, that is a war. And I really want to be sure that we're using the right terms. They're killing Ukrainians here, including children. That is not a conflict, that is a war that Putin launched against us. Second of all, in terms of diplomatic solutions, it's extremely difficult because you are absolutely right when saying that it's extremely difficult to trust Putin. I will remind everyone that a week before the war, he said that he's not going to invade Ukraine. So basically, every time Putin is opening up his mouth, he is about to tell a lie. And that is why any diplomatic solution would not bring a stable and sustainable result. And that is why I frankly do not see any other way out of this situation except for just pushing them out of our territory militarily. Any other diplomatic solutions will just not hold. Putin is unable, like he's psychologically unable to hold to any other promises that he is given. And the West shouldn't trust these promises either. I believe that the world is learning this as now as we are seeing how he is destroying my country.
Should Zelensky then trust a potential diplomatic situation?
Well, I believe that Zelensky is very realistic in his expectations. The only diplomatic solutions from what I'm reading in the Ukrainian media are potentially the discussion about the autonomous status of several territories inside Ukraine. But there is not even discussion about giving up part of the territory. So that is not on the agenda, and that is not something that the president or his party are supporting or promoting. So the maximum we can talk about is the autonomous status of Crimea or of Donbas territories within the sovereign Ukrainian state. That is the maximum we can agree upon based on what the President Zelensky is saying now.